सब्सक्राइब कीजिए 𝐮𝐩𝐼S चैनल को और बेल आइकन को दबाइए लेटेस्ट वीडियोस सबसे पहले देखने के लिए।
The Department of Telecommunications has announced March 1 as the beginning date for the 4G spectrum auctions. In this auction, 700, 800, 900, 1800, 2100, 2300 and 2500 MHz frequency bands will be available. The last time spectrum auctions were held back in 2016 when the government offered 2354.55 MHz at a reserve price of rupees 5.60 lakh crore. In today's edition of our DNS, we will let you know what is spectrum auction, and why the auction is being held now. Let us first begin by understanding what is spectrum. Spectrum basically refers to the invisible radio frequencies that wireless signal travel over. The portion used for wireless communication sits within that space and ranges from about 20 kHz to 300 GHz. Spectrum wavelengths are classified into different bands within the electromagnetic spectrum range. Spectrum can be divided into three categories: low, mid and high band spectrum. Now moving further, let us talk about spectrum auctions. Devices such as cell phones and wireline telephones need signals to connect from one end to the other. These signals are carried on airwaves which must be sent at designated frequencies to avoid any kind of interference. The central government owns all the publicly available assets within the geographical boundaries of the country, which also includes airwaves. With the increase in the number of cell phones, wireline telephones and internet users, the need to provide more space for the signals arises from time to time. In order to sell these assets to companies willing to set up the required infrastructure to transport these waves from one end to the other, the central government through the Department of Telecommunications auctions these airwaves from time to time. Spectrum is subdivided into bands which have varying frequencies. All these airwaves are sold for a certain period of time, after which their validity lapses, which is generally set at 20 years. Now let us know why is the spectrum being auctioned now. The last spectrum auctions were held in 2016 as mentioned above, when the government offered 2354.55 MHz at a reserve price of rupees 5.60 lakh crore. Although the government managed to sell only 965 MHz, about 40% of the spectrum that was put up for sale, and the total value of bids received was just rupees 65,789 crore. The need for a new spectrum auction has risen because the validity of the airwaves bought by companies is set to expire in 2021. The reserve price of all the bands together has been fixed at rupees 3.92 lakh crore this time. Depending on the demand from various companies, the prices of the airwaves may go higher but cannot go below the reserve price. Now let us know who are likely to bid for the spectrum. All the three private telecom players, Reliance Jio Infocomm, Bharti Airtel and Vi, are eligible contenders to purchase additional spectrum to support the number of users on their network. Other than these three, new companies, including foreign companies, are also eligible to bid for the airwaves. Most of the analysts expect Bharti Airtel to renew some of its old spectrum but do not bid for new spectrum at all. On the other hand, for Vi, most of the analysts expect that the company may not participate at all in this auction given the cash flow constraints it is facing. Now let us know how will the deferred payment plan work. As part of the deferred payment plan, bidders for the sub 1 GHz band of 700, 800 and 900 MHz can opt to pay 25% of the bid amount now and the rest of the amount later. In the above 1 GHz band of 1800, 2100, 2300 and 2500 MHz frequency bands, bidders will have to pay 50% upfront and can then opt to pay the rest in equated annual installments. The successful bidders will have to pay 3% of adjusted gross revenue as spectrum usage charges excluding wireline services.